part. There we go. So happy Monday. How is everything for everyone?
Great.
Everything is wonderful.
Yes.
Yep.
Good, good, good. Everybody's healthy and okay?
Yep.
Mhm.
My Broncos won yesterday, so life is
Okay.
good.
Oh yeah, gosh, we have Cheryl and Todd here. Lions and Eagles.
Oh,
I
sorry,
I
Cheryl.
saw it at 6-6. I didn't see it after that.
The Eagles defense is the real deal. And yeah, we just couldn't put any plays together. Goff got super frustrated. It was hard to watch.
We couldn't
And
put
then,
any
of
plays
course,
together
Todd,
either, but we still had more points, thankfully.
I think that, I mean, we were definitely not ahead at the last 2 minutes of the game, but that pass interference
Oh yeah,
was
that
bogus.
that was
Oh, that
bad.
was
I
Yeah.
horrible.
agree. I agree.
That was
So
horrible.
I will say that the Lions are a heck of a lot better than they have been over the last 46 years of my life. So I'm happy to be a fan.
So eternally optimistic, aren't you? I like that.
Yes.
I
And
think that's
my
good.
kids will never understand the torture of being a Lions fan when Sanders and all of our other great players that couldn't shine were in. But yeah, it's fun because our kids love them too. So it's a good experience.
I think the only football jersey I've ever owned, and honestly, I have no idea where it is. It's probably somewhere here or sadly given away sometime, but was Deion Sanders' jersey.
Oh, wow.
It's the only one I ever owned. I always thought he was just so freaking amazing. So
Well, I still sport my Barry Sanders jersey every weekend.
there
Yeah.
you go. That's so good. Okay, friends, it is 10 o'clock straight up. So let's just jump into things we're grateful for now that we set the stage for that. Todd, apparently you can go first.
Well, I guess I have to say I'm grateful for an Eagles win, but I don't know that's what I'm grateful. I'm just grateful for, hanging out with all of you today. So I'm excited to get to share and teach. So it's a great opportunity for me to talk about something I'm passionate about.
Yay. Well, we're super excited to have you. I am expressly excited because I know part of what's coming, but I don't know all. So the need to know everything is overwhelming me today. So I can't wait for you to teach. So good. Tony, hi. So fun. Okay, who's grateful? Who's got something to be thankful
I'm
for?
I'm gonna jump in and talk
Do it.
about my grateful. So this weekend was wonderful. Went and saw Brian Adams, who sings Heaven, which was our wedding song. We had seats like right at the back of the U because we were at the Sun Stadium,
Oh, okay.
one row up off the floor. And so we know that the view is going to be that far. But then he opened the concert on this itty bitty stage behind his electronic computer people right in front of my seats.
Oh, that's cool.
That was awesome. Second awesome is this weekend we are going to a Turning Point USA fundraiser at Buckeye Equestrian Center. My client is a barrel racer, and twofold blessing on her. I'm going to be listing her condo in a couple weeks and
Nice.
helping them buy a horse property. And the other part is that my daughter, who does her own business, oh, you can't see.
No, it just goes away.
Yeah, it does. Oh, well. She does custom ranch care services. And so she is going to get to market at the rodeo. And we're doing customized marketing bottles and water bottles and flyers. And she's just super excited that we get to do something together. I'm going to be there with for my client, and she's going to be marketing her company. So it just feels really good to be doing something with my daughter like that.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, who else is grateful for something?
Uh, and I am. I've been doing this a long time. We're getting close to 30 years. But every once in a while, you just have one of those closings that reminds you why you got into the business. And so I closed with some buyers. They've relocated here. They're citizens here, but from India. But the parents are in their 50s and have never owned a home before.
Oh,
And just the emotion of handing them those keys, it just, It was just phenomenal. And I'm just so grateful for those reminders of what a difference we make.
It is, you're right. It is good to have those to remind us why we do what we do, because we don't always get those, right? Right? Not all the time does it work out. So I think that's super awesome. It is nice to know that. And it's nice to have one where just in our world, seeing people who are grateful for something, right? And living in gratitude, that it's meaningful. That's awesome. I love that. Congratulations. Anybody else thankful for anything? Reagan, I see that hand.
So I know I say this and I may sound like a broken record, but I truly mean this. I am daily so grateful for the people that surround me and that counsel me, that mentor me, that support me, that help me see a different point of view. Kimberly knows who that is. Our conversation yesterday. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes. But all kidding aside, that is there's so much gratitude from me for that because I realize not everyone has that ability or the desire or the knowledge or the understanding to have the quality of people that surround me. And I know that's special. So thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
that's awesome. Yeah. I think it's interesting. The further we get along in life, the more valuable we recognize the actual people that matter are, and the ones that cause all the grief just don't get as much time, And I think we kind of get some of that with life experience. It just says, yeah, this is actually important, and this is not. And so I'm thankful for that actual wisdom and being able to decipher, who gets my time and how I've learned to value my time and my relationships. And I like a good network of people that you can count on and rely on. I read historical novels from time to time, and I'm reading one right now about the Scots and all of these clans and their loyalty and what happens and the overcoming of kingdoms and all of that. It's wild. But it is true, right? Like that clan loyalty means something. So I'm thankful for my clan. Tony says he is in a coffee shop and can't come off mute, but grateful for Todd and all his support recently. So way to go, Mr. Bookspan.
Hey, Kimberly, I wanted to say that I appreciate you and I'm grateful for you. And it's not just, well, it's everything you do, from going to Rise and making sure we're all stay together and we get together and doing these calls and always being there and answer questions. I'm super appreciative of everything that you do for all of us.
Well, that's very sweet. Thank you very much. And honestly, it's my pleasure. I do it because I want to, which is the nice part about where I am in my life. I don't have to, but I get to. And so it is awesome to be in a circle of people that like we've had some really good laughs and we've had some tears along the way, right? We've all been through a lot of things together, and I'm grateful for that journey and that history. So it's my pleasure, my honor to be connected with all y'all. Thanks, Will. That's sweet. Yay. Richie Laser had surgery this morning and he just texted me. So here's my gratitude for the day. It says, I'm alive. So I'm just gonna say I'm super happy and super grateful for that. So there we go. I gave him a heart. Anybody else thankful for anything that you want to share? I'll share one more thing. I had you guys know we have this little baby farm happening at our house, and we have all of these different harvest times, right? So kind of throughout the year, we have 4 or 5 different harvest times for the things that we've got planted. So this weekend, we harvested, oh gosh, probably a third, maybe not even quite, maybe a quarter of the limes from our tree. And so the kids' jobs are to harvest, sort, bag, and then run the fruit stand. And I'm telling you, people, it does restore my faith in humanity because people are so kind to these kids. They all have jobs. Augie's job is to hold the sign. He's 6. Penny's job is to deliver the goods. and say thank you. And Jack's job is to tally everything and make sure that we're not cheating people in the correct change. And Hudson's the pitch man. And so they all four have their jobs. And it's so cute because people are just so good to them. They're so kind to them. We talked about scripts and how scripts matter. And so I was asking them, like, before we went out, usually we pray over the fruit and over their safety, right? And so then they're ready to go. And then we talk about, like, okay, so what do you say to people? And what are the questions we're going to get? And the questions are the same, like, where's this fruit from, and why? What are you raising money for, right? And so I asked the kids to give me their answers. They gave me pretty good answers, right? So we just kind of honed their script a little bit. And then on the question of what are we raising money for, all four of them have the same answer, which I think is such a human response, because we want money, right? So I'm like, okay, but let's go a little bit deeper. Like, what are you going to use this money for? And we got down to we're going to use this money to buy Christmas presents for our family. Well, when you have a little kid who says that and you're getting handed a bag of limes, you can't help but overcompensate them. So these kids got tips on every single bag that they sold. They worked out there for like an hour and a half, and they each made $26.25 for an hour and a half's worth of work. And so they're delighted and all excited. They clean it all up and they go. But I'm grateful that we have that opportunity to teach them these things. But I'm also grateful for the people who buy from them, because they're so kind to them. They're, even if they don't buy, they stop and cheer them on and high five them. And so it is just a really beautiful thing to see the goodness of humanity that I don't think we necessarily see in our business when we are co-brokering, right? There's somebody on the other side of the deal, and it feels like this big competition and this big fight for everything. Not all humanity looks like that in sales, especially with kid sales. So anyway, I'm super grateful for that. Okay, last chance. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Anybody else? All right. I don't have any announcements. This is kind of shocking for me. We are still going to roll out the Arizona Edge, and I will talk about that. Raquel and I met this week for a lot of hours, and we are getting the finishing touches on things so that we will be ready to launch something. December 11 will be our first event for people who sign up. So I'll tell you more about that next week. We will have everything done. We'll have a breakfast, brunch, lunch, whatever we can figure out between now and then for that. So if you have questions about it, want to go deeper on the conversation, let me know and I'll do that. But I don't want to waste the time this morning or spend the time this morning, because I want Mr. Bookspan to have as much time as possible. So my friend Todd, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate you and can't wait to learn from you.
Well, I'm honored to get the opportunity to teach. I always enjoy teaching whatever it is I'm excited to teach. However, this is my favorite class to teach, and I haven't taught it on Zoom in a while. I normally teach it in a half day. Ty's not here, but Ty has been through my half day where I teach it over a few hours, and it's going to go fast because I got to squeeze it all into 48 minutes. But I'm prepared. I'm prepared to do that. So I'm just going to run through a PowerPoint. So I don't know that. Whoops, I probably need to share my screen to get you guys my PowerPoint. I was a coach for a company called Building Champions for about 3 years. But before that, I was a client of theirs. And Daniel Harkavy is the CEO and founder. And he wrote a book called Living Forward with a guy named Michael Hyatt, who you may have heard of. He's well known in the leadership space. Michael was a client of Daniel's, and they collaborated on a book, which was a lot of fun for them. And so this presentation is based off of that. I've got their permission to share it with you all. And it's just a lot of fun. So if you really want the deep dive, you buy the book Living Forward, and it will walk you through example after example after example of all of this. But I'm happy to send anyone some examples afterwards. And I apologize. Like I said, it's going to move fast. That's the expectation that you need to, as we roll. We would normally have more interaction. We would normally pause, and I would let you guys spend a few minutes thinking through some of this stuff, and then I'd let you share it in small groups, and then you'd share it out with the group, and it would really, be good. But that's not what you get today. You guys get the fire hose version of it, and so my offer is afterwards. Anyone who works on it, anyone who needs clarification in order to invest the time to work on it, let me know. I'd love to jump on a call or Zoom and do that. And then anyone who creates their life plan and is open to sharing it and wants some feedback or sharpening, I'm happy to do that as well. As a client of Building Champions, they're unique as a coaching company because people typically get coached, as you all know, for three reasons. One is time management or priority management. One is help with a business plan, and then typically business vision. And Building Champions philosophy is, well, I really can't help you with your priority management until you have a business plan. I really can't help you with a business plan until I understand what your big overall business vision is. And I honestly can't help you with your vision on your business unless I understand what's important to you as a human and in life. And that's, for me, what makes them, kind of unique. And so I started out as a client of theirs. I got lucky and I just kind of fell into coaching my second year in the mortgage business back in 2002. And so for me, this is when I first did this presentation as a coach in 2016. This apparently it wasn't even a recent picture then, but that's the picture I chose. So I did update it with a recent picture of the Bookspan clan. We have 5 dogs between us and our daughters, and I have a son-in-law now over there on the left, Kyle. And I don't think I've said it too much publicly, but Lacey, the one who's in the middle-ish towards the right, with a dog on her lap, she and Kyle are married, and they are expecting a baby in April. I'm going to be a grandfather.
Yay!
It's amazing. Hence the reason they live about 15 minutes from me here in California. And that's the reason that we're spending 90% of our time in California these days, because we knew the plan. And thankfully that plan is coming to fruition for them because they are very excited. My first coach was a guy named Bill Hart when I joined Building Champions. And I joined because I needed someone to help me figure out how to be successful in the mortgage business. And Bill, he says he didn't threaten me, but I felt threatened. He told me that he had a client who was supposed to be working on their life plan because that's the first thing you were required to do, and that client was not compliant and they had not done their life plan, and he was going to have to fire him. And so I took that as a threat to me, even though he says it was truly about some other client. And then I really struggled to get myself in the mindset to peel out a day and go work on this. So I actually drove up to Sedona. I went to one of those parking lots alongside of the road as you're pulling into town. I plunked my credit card into a machine and I bought a little ticket that gave me 5 hours to go park there. And I wandered out with some food and some liquid, and I sat and I worked on it for a few hours. And once I got bored doing that, I kind of got the outline of it done. Then I went into town and sat at a restaurant for 2 hours. And then I fine-tuned it. And then I went from there to a coffee shop for about 2 hours, fine-tuned it, and really had something that was unique. What happened that was surprising to me was I told my wife I was working on my life plan, and she was kind of offended that I was working on my life plan without her. So I always bring that up, but I did leave it next to my bed on the table, and eventually she realized it was a plan about us and what we were going to be doing as a family, kind of what my vision was for the future. And then she eventually became a life planner herself, and we get away typically once a year is our goal, to where we update our life plans and then we reconcile them together for what we're working on. We just recently did this. We went down to Dana Point for the weekend, saw Green Day in concert, but we spent a day kind of chatting about what was on the agenda as we went forward, especially with the future addition to our family. And so I just bring that up because it's something that Daniel coached me to still do individually, but make sure that we reconcile it together. These slides are intended to get you kind of in the emotional state. I was really fortunate. I was part of a coaching program from 2008 up till 2019 as a coach. I was originally a member for 8.5 years, and then I was a coach of the group for a couple of years. It was called Masters Coach. We got together once a quarter, typically, some were fun, but December was always, it was always the first week of December. It was always in California. It was always on the beach. And they always kind of tortured us with a speaker who would get up and tell a gut-wrenching story of struggle and loss. They would do things. In fact, it's funny because they're right here. Like Kimberly, I'm cleaning my desk. You really won't be able to see it because I'm not going to take myself off of mute. But I literally have an envelope that says Todd Bookspan on it, and if I open this one up, um, it's got my life plan from the previous year, and then it's got notes from family members and friends that they gathered up. One year they gave us an iPod, and people had called in and left voicemails about what they appreciated about us, about just a special memory. And it was, my parents, my kids, my wife, coworkers. I mean, they always did something to get you emotionally in the state to go out there and sit on the beach and work on your life plan. It was a code of silence. You weren't allowed to have electronics, and we had the rest of the day after they did this. But it was literally the same thing every year for more than a decade. And it's been more of a challenge since then to force myself to get out there and do it. This was kind of forced where they took a bunch of overachievers and made us do it. And so they always really started off with stories that really identified the drift. And we've all had the drift in our lives. And so I'm just going to run through because I want you to be thinking about this when hopefully you set up the time to work on your life plan. You've heard other people in this group talk about the law of diminishing intent, which means the further we get from this conversation, the less likely it is you're going to actually do what it is we talk about today. No difference. You go to Rise and you get all excited to come back and do something. And then the further you get from Rise, the less likely you are to do those things that you were excited about. And I realize we're a group of overachievers, but I'm just going to call out what I tend to see with people in general. And to me, it's kind of fun because I know, Reagan walked us through the one-page business plan of Sharon's, and I'm assuming that most, if not all of you have done that. And then this is just kind of fun because we've all done planning around business, but a lot of times, even though we have these ideas in our head, we really haven't taken the time to put it into pen to paper to have the intentionality around it. For me, that's what putting pen to paper did. And so this thing called the drift is just really, whoops, I got to move my little picture of all of you. Again, it's not intentional. It's not bad. It's just we tend to be unaware of things just happen, right? Our life, we're running so fast, especially in this market we've had for the last couple of years. If we're not intentional around it, we just get unaware of the things that we committed to personally that we're just not doing or that are getting in our way. Um, we we get overwhelmed, right? It's really easy in a lot of markets to be overwhelmed with what's going on, and so when we allow that um, to take charge of our day, of our week, sometimes of our month, then we just don't realize we're in that state because it's just overwhelming, right? It's just where we're at. It's pretty easy to get distracted, right? We've got just a lot going on, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's great. I think that a lot of us in real estate and sales suffer from shiny object syndrome. And so again, we're like, oh, I'm going to finish that business plan. Oh my gosh, now Todd's talking about this life plan. Before I finish my business plan, I'm going to jump in and start on my life. And so we just have these things that get in our way that we're like, oh my gosh, I wish I was doing that. I should be doing that. We often deceive ourselves. This one was a hard one for me to chew on, but to realize that, oftentimes I tell myself I'm doing amazing and I'm doing all the things that I said, but then when I actually look down and look at what I've written in my business plan or look at what I've written in my life plan, I realize I'm not executing all that. And then when I just look at it, again, it's just the things of life that we allow to get in the way and deceive us. And so the point of paying attention to this is just because there could be consequences, right? When we hear things like Richie having surgery. I talked to Richie on Friday and he's like, oh, it's not going to be a big deal. And I'm like, okay, surgery is a big deal anytime anyone has surgery, right? So we just want to think about these things ahead of things like that. And I think this group, and I love that Kimberly starts out with gratitude because we are talking about the things here that we know are important, right? That when we get to go see Bryan Adams in concert, who wrote and sings our wedding song, like those kinds of things are great because we're intentional around that. But if we allow the drift to sink in, then we could be unintentional and we could have consequences that just don't go well, right? I mean, we've all heard stories of people who have allowed other things to get in the way of their priorities, their family, and just don't have the relationships with people that they really hope to have at this point in their life and at this point in their career. And so, the results that we see is just confusion about what those priorities are. For me, my life plan, and I think you guys all know this about your business plans too. It's the biggest filter that I have. It's the biggest filter that I have between what I say yes to and what I say no to. My best example of that is the last couple of summers, I've just chosen not to travel as much. I've said no to speaking opportunities that were really good. I've said no to the events where I love to go and hang out with my friends and connect. But I've really used it as that filter because, if not, we don't have that clarity. It leads to confusion. We oftentimes in sales say yes to things to please people and put those people ahead of the people in our lives that are more important, right? Um, and so I just always bring that up is because I want to keep us from being confused about what our priorities are. And I find when people write them down that it's a lot easier to stay intentional around it. When people write it down, they remind themselves more frequently when they read it. And again, they're all things that we tell ourselves are obvious, but that's that deceiving thing. Just because we tell ourselves they're obvious, is that actually what other people see? And so I just think it's really important to remember that. It could be expensive, right? Typically for me, this isn't a financial piece. Even though I'm probably more money focused than I should be, but it's the relationship piece, right? It's those things that we wish we hadn't done. Those things that we can't rewind the clock and change, right? There's lost opportunity. And again, I'm not talking about lost business here. I'm just talking about lost opportunity with relationships, with things that we thought were important. It could be our health, right? It could be just things where we're just too busy to do the other stuff. I always laugh because, this is what I look like. You guys all see me walking around and with a hat on my head. But it's these ideas of how do we figure out how to put things first. And for me, this last few years, it's been my health. And so I prioritize in other times because I don't want to go down the path that unfortunately I saw my father go down, even though he was fairly healthy and fairly exercised and did those things. It was decisions he had made when he was younger that caused his life not to be as long as he would have loved. Obviously, the pain of regret, which I'll talk about in a second, and then regrets, right? Nobody wants to regret things, and I'm a big believer that for better or worse, something that we view as a regret today, I just view as a life lesson. I view failure as an opportunity to learn. I try not to stew in it, but it's been the biggest area where we've had countless people on here talk about the negative thoughts that we all have, and so I just literally wrote in my planner this morning. It's EP, extremely positive. That's the mode I'm trying to be in for the majority of my day and not look at this stuff. Before had to write my life plan, this is the quote that my coach Bill Hart that he made me memorize, and it's one that I think of all the time. I can't hear the word regret anywhere and not think of we all must suffer from one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is while the discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. And so again, for me today, this is on the filter of the personal stuff of how do we do these things. I think we talk a lot about being present. And there's a great book out there called The Precious Present. It's one of those fable books, and now I'm forgetting the guy's name who wrote it, but if you just Google it, it's like one of those really thin books, and it just talks about the presence, the gift of time, right? Of being present with people, and we all carry around this little thing called a phone. That's a little computer that we carry around and distracts us all. And probably like a lot of you, I'm really attempting to be intentional and not be on my phone when I'm around family or friends. And it's hard. It's hard to stay off it. And this story that I tell around it was I thought I was really good when I was a young dad, right? I drove my kids to school always. It's one of the things that I really said was one of my priorities, and I did it all through high school. I was very sad. I only had one kid who got a driver's license when they were 16, Emmy, and I told her it's because she didn't love me and she didn't want to spend time with me. But that's all right. She still loves to spend time with me when we're together, so that's good. But I remember I had a rule that I was a self-imposed rule that I wanted to stay off the phone when I was at home, and so I was really good at it. I forced myself to do it. I was intentional because I put it in my life plan that year that I was going to be more present at home because, again, it's hard in the mortgage business just like it is in real estate. People want to talk to you 24/7. And then I did what I always do. I left the house, and as I was leaving the house, I pick up the phone. I looked to see who called me, what texts I had, who I missed. And little Emmy was in the back seat. She was still sitting in the car seat at the time. I literally know right where I was on Sharon Lane when she said it. And she said, "Hey, Dad." I'm like, "What, honey?" she's like, hey, you know that thing about phones in the house? I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, like I'm crushing it is what I was thinking in my head. She's like, hey, do you think we could do that in the car too? And I was like, oh, like stabbed to the heart, right? And so, but I was like, you know what? This is a learning opportunity. Failure, I could have had regret over those things, but I was super grateful that that she was willing to open her mouth and talk to me about that. And so, the reason I'm talking about these things is not so that you think about the things you could have done differently as a parent or a friend or a spouse or those other things, but I want you to be thinking about the things you want to be intentional about as we go forward. And so um, Daniel always did a good job of, like I say, there was always lots of tears on that Friday morning that we were going to do life planning. And he always did a really good job. And it's hard for me in, 10, 12 minutes, whatever I'm spending on this to do justice to that. But I'm hoping that when you go out and you set the time aside to work on your life plan, that you will kind of remember these things. You'll think about the drift. You'll think about regret. You'll think about lost opportunity to put yourself in that mindset and then shift it to positive, right? Shift away from the negative, shift to the positive of what it is you want to do. Um, when when I taught it to Ty, gosh, this was a long time ago because it was right when I had started coaching. But I actually taught it 2 days. One day was all to real estate agents, but I actually did my warm-up class with all of the employees of our mortgage company, and we shared an office with underwriters, processors. We had about 30 team members in there, and I actually got permission from their boss that I was going to teach it in the morning and keep them all out of work for the morning, and then I got them all the day off in the afternoon. And so they actually were required after we got done with the class to actually go spend the rest of the day not working on loan files, but actually working on their life plans, which was a lot of fun. And so I'm just going to run through this real quick because I think this is going to be obvious to all you smart folks, but life planning is opposite of the drift. Um, and again, this to me is the fun part, but we're not really going to have time for me to come off on mute. So this is vacation planning. Um, any idea? Well, I guess you could come off mute, or you could just throw it in the chat. Any idea what the average person spends for time planning a vacation, according to the most recent AI and Google statistics?
I feel like it's going to be more than days.
Yeah, yeah. They spend about 18 hours of total hours when you track the actual time, and it's over about an average of 2 months that most people plan for a big epic vacation. Um, Cars not quite as bad. Cars, the average person spends 14 and a half hour researching the car they're going to buy, and over about a 2 week period. And then of course this big one, which I went through with my daughter a couple of years ago, the wedding. Um, the average person spends 250 hours spending a wedding. It was between 200 and 300 hours, and it typically most people spend 12 to 18 months planning for their wedding. So that is wild. So we spend a lot of time planning that. In our world, we spend a lot of time business planning, and again, we just don't typically spend time on our life. And so the goal of a life plan is to be a GPS. I already said it's my filter, right? It's what decisions am I going to make? What am I going to prioritize? Who are the things? What are the categories? What are the things I want to do with those who's? What are the traditions that we have? What are going to be my non-negotiables? And then we'll talk about it. What are going to be the action steps to get there? And I think we've got a lot of people, here who kind of exemplify a lot of the greatness that we're going to talk about that comes from this. And this is why I know it's a group that, you all have thought through these things before. I've seen even over the last, year or two, people on this call take action to make big major life changes. And I'm sure, there's personal reasons I know for all of it, but I'm sure some of it is based off of, oh my gosh, I want to, I got to get away from this thing. And some of it is, hey, no, I want to run towards this thing, right? People make decisions for things they want to get away from or they want to run towards. Um, Life plan's not this big ass thick thing. That was sort of my original vision of a business plan. Most people don't know it. I actually have a degree in entrepreneurship, my undergraduate degree, and we actually spent 1 year, 12 months writing a business plan. It wasn't quite this thick, but it was like a good half-inch thick business plan. I had a business plan competition. I was judged by Carl Eller, then the CEO of Circle K. We had the guy who, I think it was Ed Bovee, founded America West Airlines, then US Airways, whatever it became. We had like some big people. I had to be nervous and present this business plan in front of. It was super thick, and really the goal of a life plan is it for it to be obvious, or the opposite of that, just a short written document. Um, Mine is very thin. I've got some examples of life plans here. Whoops, where did my folder go? They all just fell out of it. But small little life plans. I mean, they're really thin. I'm holding it up like here's one that was an example that was done, and it's 4 pages. My original life plan was really thin. I have my original life plan, and it's gotten thicker over the years, and I'll explain why as I kind of show you what it looks like. It's created by you, for you, describes how and when you want to be remembered, which is a double-edged sword. It's really hard, and it's also, to me, really exciting. It articulates your personal priorities. It provides specific actions necessary, and it's a living, breathing document. And so again, I think the most important piece here is that it's a living document. And then I think the other part is the second sentence there, that's created by you and for you. Again, I know most of you have, well, I know I shouldn't say most of you, all of you have significant others, whether it's family members, kids, people in your world who are really important to you. And so I can't encourage you enough to realize that this is all about you, because of how you want to be for them. And for me, what I do is I carry around my printed version. So it depends on what I'm doing. Like if I'm traveling, like last week, I flew to Utah. I taught exactly what to say to a brokerage up there. And I tend, when I travel, to make sure I throw my life plan in, because I know I'm sitting by myself in a hotel room. I'll have a few minutes to myself, and I go through it. And then I always have a pen in my hand ready to make um, any other thoughts or ideas that come to head. I don't always adjust it every time I read it, but I make scribbles on my life plan all year. And then once a year, sometimes it's every 18 months, then I'll sit down and I'll update the typed version of it that I save on my computer, and date it, and then I reprint it out. And then I carry it around, because it's not easy for me to read it and feel emotionally attached to it when it's on a computer screen. But I do like to have that version of it, ready to go. I also find, as probably a lot of you do, is that if I'm working on my computer, then guess what? I'm going to be distracted by email and text messages and all the other things that come into it. The goal of a life plan is to answer a few questions. How do I want to be remembered? And again, this was the hardest part for me, right? When I started this, it was 2002. So was I 34 or 44, whatever that math is right now. I guess I was 34 when I did it, right? I had kids at the time. And so, it was one of those things I was really, hadn't really thought through some of the things that I think through today as someone in my 50s, approaching 60. That's what's crazy. I had friends over to watch the Eagles game, and he's like, well, I'm almost 60. And I was like, well, shoot, we graduated high school together. That makes me almost 60 also. And that's okay. I'm excited about it because of the changes I've made over the past 23 years that I've been a life planner, that lead me to believe that, God willing, I will live a long and healthful life. We identify what matters most. And, again, I think it's obvious to all of us. We know what matters most, because that's probably where we spend our time when we're not in the drift. However, it's just different when you write it down and you have that intentionality around it. And I should say this too, when it says what matters most, right? You see pictures of people here. It's the who matters most that I think is a big part of it. But for the who to matter, you also have to think about what matters. And I'll give some examples of that as we go through it. And then how can I get from here to where I want to be? We have the current reality, right? Where we are now. And then we have where we want to be. We have this vision of that, future self, of that future relationship, of that future experience. And what the life plan did for me, just like a business plan does, it's great if I say I'm going to close a certain number of transactions, but I really have to then spend the time of what do I need to do to get there? Is that something I got to do with my CRM? Is that something I got to do with my social media? Is that something I have to do from an activity perspective? Is it all three? How do I prioritize those? And it's those action steps that are going to be really critical to make sure we get there. And my experience is that we don't think about that in life. When I was a coach for building champions for that 3 years, it was a little awkward for me because I realized I never had a job, right? Straight out of college, I had a bicycle store for 10 years. I was my own boss. And then when I got in the mortgage business, even though I had a boss, right? It's no different, than you all have a broker who I guess technically is sort of your boss, but not really, right? We're independent contractors. We do our own thing. And so when I became a coach, I had a boss, I had a job, I had to sit in a chair, I had to have my headset on, I had to take notes. And my schedule was set 12 months in advance. And that was really rough for me. But what I loved was having the opportunity to impact people's lives. I coached CEOs, mortgage companies, to top producers trying to grow and scale teams like I did. I call them the young guns. They were young kids, all male for whatever reason, all having babies, probably going to be taking loan applications in the delivery room. And I mentored them. And then I had a husband and wife veterinarian who was just fun to coach someone outside of the mortgage and real estate space. But the reason I tell that story is because I got to impact their lives because I got to dig in and required them to do this life plan, right? It was a requirement. And just like when Coach Bill threatened me, sort of, I had to threaten a lot of them to get it done because they didn't come into coaching because they thought they wanted to write a life plan. They came into coaching because they really wanted to make more money and to have a better life. And I said, well, what's the point of having more money to have the opportunity for a better life if you haven't defined what that looks like? And so it's this whole idea of taking those action steps as we roll forward. So the goal is to get yourself some clarity, some confidence, some courage. And so here's where the rubber hits the road. We are going to roll for the next 20 minutes on exactly what is in a life plan. Now, I will tell you that when I started my life plan, that book didn't exist, Living Forward, that I showed you. And the format was a little more free flowing. It wasn't quite as formal as this is, but it had to become formal when they put it in a book. And I like this format. However, if you looked at my life plan, it resembles this 80% ish. But remember, this is a plan for you by you. And so yours can resemble it 80% ish or 50% ish or whatever is really important. But ultimately, it starts here. You begin with the end in mind. You've probably heard Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says, begin with the end in mind. And this was the part that I didn't do for, I don't know, more than a decade in mine, which is writing your eulogy, which was really, 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 really rough for me. It's still the least, it's the part of my life plan that is, I would call it the thinnest, right? It doesn't have as much meat like on the bone, so to speak, because it's just something I struggled with, right? We don't want to think about our mortality. And when you're writing your eulogy, it's imagining as if you're a guest at your own funeral, written as if your life ended today, right? So again, when I first learned this, did mine as I was in the future, right? I was like, I'm an old man, right? I just, all the experiences I had then, but what I like about this new adjustment, I'll call it, to the life plan is it really makes you focus on, gosh, where am I now? Because again, we want to look at what are the changes we want to make so that if our eulogy today isn't what we hoped it would be, then what do I need to change? What do I need to prioritize? What do I need to implement? What do I need to do? So that way, when that time comes, and hopefully for all of it's a long time down the road, that what people say about me is what I want them to say about me, but maybe they're not in a place to say today. And so it's this whole idea of leaving a legacy. And when you think about this, right, you've unfortunately probably all been to a funeral and you've got that first row of people. It's kind of like when you teach a class, you got those first row of people who are the learners, right? That's going to be your family. It's going to be your significant others, probably your kids and maybe some grandkids. And then you got that second row, which is, maybe your brother, sister, and maybe your nieces and nephews, if you've got them. And maybe it's, some of your best friends and people who matter to you. And then maybe that third row is some of your coworkers and other people who really respected you and who you impacted their lives. And then that fourth row and beyond, those are just the other people that were some important part of your life, someone who felt enough about you, to show up. It was it was really interesting, like when my father passed away, to see the different layers of his life because things changed over time, right? He was very involved in bicycle racing. And and so we had these people that I hadn't seen in, 20, 30 years that he had impacted their lives, some of them when they were kids. I got a friend, we called him Hamster. And Hamster came up and said, "Oh my gosh, I just want you to know that your parents were like, they were like my surrogate parents, right? My parents didn't care about me and my bike racing, even though his dad ironically owned a bike shop. He said, your parents were the ones who made sure that I had a ride to the bike races. Your parents were the ones who coached us." And we heard stories like that. And then later on, he was, part of the Porsche club because he loved driving Porsches and there's people there and he was an attorney and there's people from his work life. And so you have all these different layers of people who show up for you and have different memories of you, and it's this legacy. And so this was the hardest part. Like I said, I didn't write it. I didn't do it really till I became a coach because I felt like at that point I had to. And I would just tell you if it's a tough one for you, skip it. But ultimately, it's this idea of leaving a legacy. Um, and so that's kind of the next part, right? Writing your legacy statements as if you was read some point in the future. So this is how I originally, it's still how my eulogy is. It's really what I want to be remembered as, but we're setting out that light for who we are on the path to become. Maybe you're already there. But my guess is that when you take the time to sit down and think through this, there's probably some things that you want people to say differently about you. There's probably some things that if you could wave a magic wand that you would like to be looked at in the future differently. For me, I'll tell you, don't want to be remembered as a guy who was on his phone all the time. And my biggest struggle, I'm still focusing on that. I want to be remembered as a guy who was super curious and asked lots of questions, right? That's not always who I was and how I showed up. I often showed up and talked a lot. And so when I started thinking through these things, when I was brave enough to write my eulogy, I realized there were just certain habits and traits that I wanted to be different. And you can pick whatever that point is in the future. It could be when you're 90. It could be when if you're a longevity person, when you're 120 or whatever you think that number looks like. But I would just, sort of think through, what do you really want to change? What do you really, for me right now, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about what's this new grandson going to say about me, right? I want to be the fun grandpa. I really like uh, my daughter's father-in-law, Gary. He's a super good dude. I actually like him a lot. But you know what? I want to be the fun grandpa. Guess what? I cared enough that I made some big changes in my life to be out near them. And maybe he will too. It doesn't really matter. Don't think any different of him. I just made a choice that's important to me for how I want to have a relationship as my kids grow older and as my grandkid grows older. So this legacy statement is written about how I want to be remembered. And that's really how I wrote my original eulogy. And then really just making it as compelling as you can. And like I said, I've got some examples of some of this stuff that I will be happy to, just shoot me an email, Todd at Win by Noon. It's the easiest one. And then I can send you any additional things that would be helpful. So when I did this, like I say, it was all free form. Living forward, I'll put up a slide at the end that has Building Champions where they'll give you a bunch of free resources. You can go there and get them from them. And those free resources will be kind of outlines and walk you through a lot of this stuff. We all know this balance isn't equal, right? Balance is about appropriate, right? What are those things going to look like? And so here's where we're going to start in the categories of your life plan, right? And so in your life plan, you've got what they call the circle of being, the circle of relating, and the circle of doing. So when you look in the middle, the being, that's you, and then the spiritual, physical, and intellectual. The first time that someone shared their life plan with me, um, he had his relationship with God as number one, right? Like what is spiritual? That was his most important, thing in his life. Made sense to me. And then his number two thing in his life, I assumed was going to be his wife, and it was him. And he said it was all about me physically, because if I'm not physically, mentally, spiritually there, then I won't be the best I can be for everyone. If I don't prioritize my health, I'm not going to live a long enough life to be there. So I was like, oh, all right, that makes sense. Now I can tell you, because I've looked at now, you know, in the hundreds of life plans, everyone's got a different order, right? Some people it is their kids that are top of their list. Some people it's themselves. Some people it's God. Some people it's some other thing that they put there. Thankfully, I don't think I ever saw money at the top of anyone's list, but ultimately you're going to start off with that being. So I always just kind of, think through that piece. Relating is that next one, right? Spouse, kids, friends, right? Marital, parental, social. And then outside of there are the other pieces that are in my life plan, right? Vocational, avocational, financial, right? So I do have a financial part of my plan. I do have, a plan around Bookspan Baker mortgage team, right? I've got Matt as a relationship, right? How do I want my relationship with my business partner to be? I've got my team. How do I want to show up as a leader, right? So I have those things in there. I also have my self-improvement plan, right? What am I going to do from, how many books am I going to read or listen to, in a year to how many conferences am I going to attend? I mean, all those things that are important there. I've got my health right now, which is, what are those commitments, which we can walk through in a few minutes. So the first thing is going to be you're just going to select the account that you're going to start with, and eventually you'll see how many accounts you want to have. My current account list is 15, which is the highest it's ever been. I've consolidated some, like my kids were an account. Now they're each broken out as a separate account. But originally they were, I kind of felt like I was just kind of doing the same things. They were young kids, but now I've got to be more intentional around it, right? I've got a kid who's a school teacher in New York. Now, granted, the good news is she loves to fly and visit us a lot. But I have to be intentional for that one-on-one time with her. And, I'm flying to New York in December. I'll spend a couple days with her. I've already got, you have to plan exactly 30 days in advance to eat at our favorite restaurant and get a reservation. And so, you know what? Guess what? I won that one. I did it. I didn't miss it. I've missed it before and had to call and beg them to give us reservations, but we have them. And so again, it's just kind of thinking through what those accounts are and what they look like for you. And then what you're going to do is define a purpose for that account. So, right, so the first thing is the account name, and then the second is going to be a purpose for that account. And so, again, you're going to kind of think what that looks like. So, here just to kind of give you, this is one of the samples that if you go to the Building Champions things, you can download. And this is a real life plan from somebody named Angela. At least they said it was a real life plan, but it's pretty basic. But the purpose for them was to be physically fit enough to enjoy all life has to offer, especially the outdoors, and to feel good in whatever I choose to wear, right? Purpose for finances was to regularly save money to have financial reserves as well as accomplish short-term goals. And so again, you can absolutely get more definitive on that. But normally when I see a purpose, it's anywhere from 1 to 3 sentences. Like what's really the purpose there. For me, my health purpose is, to be able to actually play on the floor with my grandkids. I don't want to be, the grandparent who can't get up and down to play on the floor. Although I don't like rolling around in dog hair, but I'm going to have to get over that, I think. Just one of those things. And then the second part is to, clarify the vision. And so, again, it's to me, the vision and the purpose kind of overlap a little bit. But ultimately, it's this opportunity to add a little bit more specificity, to that. And so, again, it could be like when it comes to health, like I love this one because it says I want to feel good in whatever it is I choose to wear. And so, again, the next thing there could be what's the specific, weight that I need to be at for that to happen, right? That's a unfortunate, but very common, obvious thing if we, that we can focus on a number. Maybe for that person, it could have been, hey, that's a size 8, who knows, whatever that is. Could be a vision around health, could be literally like things like blood pressure, resting heart rate, or all those things that, a lot of these things we wear on our body to, track things, are there, right? So for me, like that's part of my vision right now is, what are some of the metrics that I measure around my health. Find some inspiration. I felt kind of robbed of this until a friend of mine shared her life plan with me, and she had cool Bible quotes in hers. She had cool pictures in hers. And so that was really one of the things I did one year. I broke the rules. I went to my hotel room and I found pictures and I found quotes and I actually spent time doing that, which was just a lot of fun, right? Each account has, my account for Tara has a picture of me and Tara. My account for the girls has me with doing some fun memory with the girls. And so I found some stuff like that. My wife and my favorite band in high school is Madness, right? So mine, by us is one of their songs, which isn't one of my favorite songs, but it's one of my favorite quotes. Take time for your pleasure, laugh with love, take a hand out of another, and sing for the wings of a dove. That I wrote on my plan there. And so just this idea of coming up with some inspiration that will emotionally draw you to it when you get to that point and you're looking at it. But I thought that was, kind of one of my more fun things. Um, and then it's determine your current reality. And again, this is kind of a hard one, but I look at people like Will, who's here, who lost a ton of weight over the last year, right? And so oftentimes, again, health is the easiest one to give an example of. But if my current, if my plan is that I weigh 160 pounds, but I weigh 180 pounds, then my current reality is I weigh 180 pounds. If my goal is to have my resting heart rate, be 55, but it's 60, then guess what? That's my current reality. If my goal is to have, 12 months reserves in my bank account, but I only have 3 months reserves, then that's my current reality. And I think that's really important. I think that is one of the areas where we have an opportunity to call ourselves out. And again, here I told you my goal right now is to be extremely positive, but you have to look at those things and see how you're doing and where you're crushing it. You get to give yourself the high five and then look for that opportunity, where I want to improve it. And then we're going to identify specific commitments, right? And so again, these are the things that we talked about when we were doing the business planning class a few weeks back, right? What are those commitments to get there? So for me, I go to F45 3 days a week. It's a gym where I work out. I go on the resistance days. I joined the challenge with all the young kids. So that means I have to go 4 days. I had to actually go earlier than I ever want because of the time change. I had to be there at 7 a.m. so I could work out on this miserable Monday workout that I've avoided because I don't like it. But my commitment is 3 days a week. I jumped in, on the challenge, low sugar right now. So I've got specific nerdy commitments around my health. Guess what? I'm far from perfect. We had friends over. My wife bought cookies from this bakery called Levain, which if you've ever been to New York, Levain, they opened one that's a 3-minute walk from my house. I walked over there. My wife and I walked over there. Thought we should have cookies for dessert, and they didn't all eat that because my friend has apparently better discipline than me. So I ate the rest of the cookies before I went to bed. So I'm not perfect, but that's okay. Today is a new day, progress, not perfection. But I have specific commitments around that, right? You heard the person, Angela talked about finances, right? It's put $500 into accounts that are not used or readily available monthly, right? Increase my 401k monthly, right? Curb my spending, be more deliberate about how and when I spend money and make lists when shopping, right? Frequency daily. And so, again, could they have been more specific? Like, okay, if I put something in the Amazon cart at night from my phone, then I have to wait 24 hours before I can hit order. There's other ways to do it, but the specific commitments are what's going to get you there. Because ultimately those specific commitments need to go from there to your calendar, right? And that's where if you're not reading your life plan with some regularity, then you run the risk of maybe not getting through that. And so ultimately, this is the slide where the music should be playing and you should be all inspired to go out there and do it. So I'm just going to run back real quick through this in the 4 minutes I have, right? We're going to pick after we do our emotional stuff, right? Our eulogy and then that vision statement for where we want to be, that legacy statement. We're going to pick out a category and just start with one category, right? Normally, when I teach this in the group, we pause, you go out, you work on the category, whichever one you want to do. I encourage people to do typically health because it's easy and then you're comfortable sharing that with someone. Then they come back, they sharpen each other, and then they share it out. Then you're going to define your purpose for that, right? 1 to 3 sentences. What's the overall arching purpose of what you want that account to be? You're going to clarify your vision. This is where you're going to put some bullet points below it about what does that look like? You're going to find some inspiration, right? Not a requirement, but kind of cool, right? If you really think about what that is. And for me, again, that could typically a picture or a quote or something else that might get you there. You're going to determine your current reality. Again, hey, here's where I'm at. Again, for me, this is bullet points, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point about where I'm at, because then I'm looking at that gap, right? We have that gap. I call it an opportunity gap because I want to be positive about it. It's an opportunity to get on the path to get where I want to be. And then after that, we're going to identify those specific commitments. We would call those actions, and they just have to get in your calendar and, know what that looks like. You all know my other commitment. Again, I know it's fake. It's not real. 10,000 steps a day is a thing for me, right? I have very few days in a year where I don't get 10,000 steps, right? If I'm traveling, that's my biggest risk. So what do? I get to the airport 30 minutes earlier and I walk a few miles in the airport. People look at me really weird, but that's okay because they were like, wow, that guy's walked by me 5 times. And then ultimately, in the end, we are going to find that, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. I was like, wait a second, that's not good. Identify those commitments and then get out there and do it. Not bad. I got 2 minutes to spare. Here is that slide. Oh, and go find your rock. That's me sitting on a rock at one of our beaches, because that was what Daniel always said. He said he went to his rock every year, and I saw this rock and I thought that was cool. Someone took my picture. The only weird thing is my friend Jeff Bell is sitting on the ground next to me. I climbed up on that rock from the side that you see here, and then I looked over, and there he was working on his life plan quietly. Here's where you get the resources. So if you go to Building Champions, it's at Living Forward. Bonuses.livingforwardbook.com, and then type in the word password Building Champions. It'll let you download all the cool things that are there. I'll leave that up for one moment, but real quick, I'll just show you this. This is when I last taught this, or when I created this slide count. Look at my hair. Look at me. I wore a suit back then. You guys are like, wow, who is that guy? This is me as a coach in 2018 when I taught it to Prime Lending. I had the CEO of Prime Lending, who I'd never met, who just walked in at the very last minute and sat right in front of me to make me super nervous while I presented to 30 of their vice presidents on Living Forward. So, like I say, I don't think I've ever taught it so fast. There's no right way, there's your way. And I just think it's an opportunity to do something different than what most of us have done. And what I would tell you is, even now, when I run into an old client of mine, they always say this was one of the most impactful things. I spoke in Detroit for one of my young guns earlier this year. I taught exactly what to say to 200 of his favorite real estate agents. And when he introduced me, one of the things he said in the introduction is that Todd tried to save me from myself. He's my only young gun who got divorced. But what he said was one of the things he had me do was a life plan. And when you look at me now, the things that I said I wanted to do as a father and when I found my true love, those are the things that I'm doing because of Todd and him making me do a life plan. So I hope that down the road, when we are all together, that's something that you feel that was an opportunity for you and your family, whatever that looks like.
Well, we will all come to your funeral and share that you changed our life on November 17th by the life plan conversation. Thank you. This is outstanding. I took almost 6 pages of notes.
Seriously, I have a cramp in my hand.
Right?
Well, like I say, it was
because I was writing as fast as I could.
Well, I got a couple minutes. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stay around and answer them. Like I said, I think that if you are stuck in any way, you know, y'all have my cell phone number. Text me. I would love to jump on a call and help you get unstuck if you need some inspiration that way. And then once you've done it, if you want to bounce any or all of it off of somebody else, would be my pleasure.
And this recording, you guys, will be put in the Lines and Legends Facebook page too, so that you can go back and reference it as you're working through it. And then to tap into Todd after that too. That's an option for you.
Awesome. Thank you
So
so
good.
much. This is awesome.
Yeah. Tony
Thank you
says this
so
was
much.
fantastic. It was super good. Yeah. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you so much. And congratulations on almost granddad.
I know it's kind of crazy to think, but this gray hair is there for a reason, so that I look the part.
There you go.
I always said that if I'd known how great my grandkids were going to be, I'd have been a lot nicer to my kids.
I like that. That's a great
Kelly
quote.
calls
Thanks,
them the
Susan.
replacements. So that's good.
Yes.
That's good. All right, you guys, we'll have a super great week. Todd, appreciate you so much. Thanks the rest of you for hanging out. We'll see your lovely faces next Monday.
All right.
Bye.